Hello from the bar of the Woolpack Inn, Beckindale, Yorkshire. Surely one of the best-known pubs in the whole country. The domain of one man, the genial, bewhiskered, mine host of these licensed premises, one Amos Brearly, who shortly and sadly is to call time, gentlemen, please, for the very last time. Yes, it is sad because the story of Amos and the Woolpack goes back a long way. In fact, it goes back over 18 years.
Here he goes, then.
Aye. It's the end of him.
You were a good man, in his way.
Think they'll say same when you go.
Not, but I'll be past caring then, I reckon. Aren't you going to burial?
Think I should, do you?
Yes, they did.
The first episode of Emmerdale Farm, as it was then called, was shown in 1972. A lot has changed over the years, but Amos and Wilks are still going strong.
And there's no call for lewdness, young man. You should have done more last night.
You were up all night packing. You couldn't have done any more.
But there's so much stuff.
The men have got enough to keep them busy, haven't they?
They're shifting stuff from upstairs.
Well, then, sit down and finish your cup of tea.
I've not got time to sit down, Mr. Wilks.
Amos, will you sit down before you fall down? Where you're going on, it won't only be your possessions carried out in a box.
Aye. Oh, I suppose you're right.
I think the basic thing about it is that they're both lonely. I mean, Wilks has lost his wife, who obviously was meant a great deal to him, and then his daughters, after somewhat checkered careers, living in Italy. And I think they're both lonely. And Wilks, very long-sufferingly, puts up with all of Amos's nonsense. But I think Wilks is sensitive enough to sense what's behind the crusty exterior. And they're both very fond of each other. Arthur's, I suppose, my greatest friend now because we've shared our lives for 18 years. I mean, we spent more time with each other than our own families and friends. And as you say, we both fortunately share a love of pipe smoking. We like good food, we like good wine, and we both are avid Times crossworders. So when we're waiting to go on, there's nothing delights us more than to sit there and do the odd clue.
I think I managed 14 across.
14 across, and perversely puts juniors ahead of barrister.
He and Arthur, between them, when you get in the dressing room with them, and it's like sitting inside a volcano. Both their pipes are blazing away. You can hardly see them. There's all this smoke going all over the place. But these wonderful stories, these wonderful theatrical stories that they tell. Ronnie has worked with everybody who's been anybody at some stage or other. He's a great raconteur, and he has a wonderful memory. And I can sit and listen to them for hours. My lungs can't take it, but my ears can.
Ronnie's arrival at the Queen's Hotel in Leeds for a Variety Club lunch in his honour was in a style befitting the landlord of the Woolpack and an honorary licensed victualler. Inside, celebrities and the public had gathered to pay tribute to his professionalism and good humour.
May we be forgiven? I saw you transport outside. I like that.
In a way, we can't really believe that Ronnie's not going to be around the place, puffing on his pipe, eating the canteen, all the food in the canteen, rehearsing, doing the crossword with Arthur, arm wrestling with Stan Richards, that sort of thing. And he's going to be greatly missed. The message really is, Ronnie, you're very much loved. You're going to be a great loss to all the people that you work with and millions of viewers. And we wish you luck and success and happiness and health and prosperity. God bless you.
To me, Ronnie, can't keep saying Ronald, Ronnie has been confidant, a paragon of professional rectitude, a prompter in need. Where are you now? A marvellous lexicographer
and crossword companion. A true friend indeed. And all I can say is, truly, never a cross word in 18 years.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. A wise old owl sat in an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why aren't we all like that wise old bird? Well, Ronnie, I think that's you, a wise old bird. But it's not just that you're wise, Ronnie. You're very kind. A newcomer like I was 10 years ago. Everybody welcomed me. They were a real family and I was welcomed in. And I think I learnt a lot from you, Ronnie. You told me about lovely Tote Townley and how you might have to do 9 or 10 retakes because he would call you Bolly or Jolly or Matt or whoever. And then he'd finally get it right and he said, and you wait, he said, you'll be the one that goes next. So just be careful.
Emmerdale Farm is in the heart of the Yorkshire Dales, and at the heart of Emmerdale Farm since episode 1 has been Annie Sugden, played of course by Sheila Mercier. Well, here we are sitting in your kitchen, Annie's kitchen, your domain. I think probably must be one of the best known kitchens in the history of world television. So as Ronnie leaves the series, as part of that original family breaks up, is there anything you'd like to say to him to pay him tribute?
Well, I think he's going to have a starry future. He's not going to stop work now, obviously. He'll go on to do bigger and better things. And I do wish him all the luck in the world.
But there'll be a hole, won't there?
Oh, yes, there'll be a hole, yes. A big one, and more so for Henry than anybody else. It'll be very hard for him, I think. But we'll see how things turn out. I mean, all sorts of things are going to unfold.
Yes, well, we don't know what's going to happen, but one thing we do know, that he hasn't been killed off, so...
Oh, no, that's a blessing. At least he can come back. Yeah.
So we might see him round this kitchen table yet, perhaps, who knows?
You never know. I'm sure we'll invite him to Christmas lunch or something like that.
And on Ronnie's last day on location for scenes outside the Woolpack, there was a special lunch for him and a presentation from the crew.
Ronnie, as it's your last day on location, we'd just like to make a small presentation to you from the crew and the cast, and yet another small bottle of champagne for you.
Thank you very much. Ronnie's closest companion on and off the screen was Arthur Pentelow. When did they first meet?
Oh, more years ago than I care to remember, actually, well before Emmerdale. We were both working in theatres in Birmingham. Ronnie at the Alexandra Theatre and myself at the Birmingham Repertory Theatre. There was a little friendly rivalry between the two theatres. However, we did meet at Winnie Banks's famous theatrical suppers, Tripe and Onions. And we all met, and I think that's when we first made a friendship.
But I mean, it was marvellous chemistry between Arthur and I. Funnily enough, Arthur was the only member of the cast I knew previous to Emmerdale. We'd never worked together, but we'd both been in the same city. Arthur was at the Grand Birmingham Rep, and I was at the Alexander Theatre, which also had a rep company. And so we used to have joint parties. And that's where I met Arthur, so I knew him. And we struck a rapport from the moment we started working together.
Presumably there was life before Amos Brearly. What exactly were you doing before you got the part?
Well, it was in rep, really. I did about 3 or 4 televisions. My very first one was from a stage, actually, at Oldham. But going way back, when I was 9, my father died. And I went away to school, an orphanage, with my brother in Birmingham. Almost the first year I was there, we were all taken to see Peter Pan with Jean Forth Robertson. And then from that moment on, I wanted to be an actor. But I never thought I would be. a life in an orphanage, and then I went into a factory and worked in an office. And in those days, pre-war really, only the middle class seemed to get into acting and go to drama school. It never occurred to me. I did a bit of amateur work, and then I went into the army, and after 6 months training in England, I went to Egypt. And the first day I was there, I was walking by the theatre cum canteen, and I heard the sound of singing coming from it, and I walked in and I sat at the back, and they were rehearsing a concert party, and they were being directed by an officer. And he saw me sitting at the back, and he said, "Are you interested?" And I said, "Yes, very." And 2 weeks later, I was directing the show, playing in it and comparing it. And I was very lucky because they then kept me on there in the unit in charge of entertainments. So I never saw any action. I never saw a shot fired in anger, because they always said, no, keep McGill back. He's useful for the morale.
All the people that we've spoken to who have worked with you have paid tribute to your great professionalism, and particularly, for example, how you always know your lines.
Yeah, I think it's my rep training, yes. And I can't work unless I know the lines. And so I learn them in advance always. Mm.
Do you want to have... Oh, thank you, Mr. Wilks. You ordered a taxi?
I said my goodbyes.
Ah.
I'm going to stand on forecourt to take my last look at the pub. Do you want to join me?
Be a pleasure.
Ronnie and Arthur were doing scene after scene after scene in the Woolpack, and at rehearsals I arrived and Ronnie knew all the words. I mean, all the other actors were walking about with books in their hands and putting their moves down, but not Ronnie. I mean, he knew it, and I thought, oh, this is... I mean, do they all work like this or what? But no, that's just one of Ronnie's little ways. He arrives at rehearsals. He knows the lot.
He terrified me, absolutely terrified me, because he was so professional. He came into the blocking rehearsal when most actors come with a script there, and they don't know anything about it. I mean, sometimes they haven't actually read it. Ronnie is word perfect from the first moment you see him, and that was very frightening. I've worked on Coronation Street and the EastEnders and a few other soaps as well, and I've yet to come across anybody who is quite so professional and quite so organised as Ronnie is. It's quite extraordinary.
I would like to propose a toast and wish him a very happy retirement. To you, Amos.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of pints I've pulled in all these years I've been landlord at Woolpack, but it must run into hundreds of thousands. And I am now pulling my last one. And it's going to be for... me. And I'm not going to pay for it, Mr. Wilks. Your very good health, ladies and gentlemen.
Cheers.
Cheers. Not bad, though, I say it myself.
Stuart Doughty has been the producer of Emmerdale for 3 years. Just how did he decide the manner of Amos's departure?
One thinks a lot, first of all. From my point of view, we were quite lucky in that Ronnie gave us a long notice period. I mean, he did tell me and the world in general some time ago that he wanted to leave sometime after his 70th birthday. So we had a long time to think about it. And to be honest, we've actually changed our minds about the way Amos departs, at least twice, I think. I won't tell you how he goes, or the manner of his going. That's got to be a secret for another 10 days or so. But I've kept him abreast of developments. He's been involved, not in the storylining of it, but I've sort of kept him in touch with the way we were thinking.
Well, there have been all sorts of rumours about how he would go. One was that he'd have a heart attack behind the bar of the Woolpack at Christmas. Now, we know that hasn't happened, but...
We did consider killing him off. When any much-loved character who's been in a soap for a long time goes, there's a great temptation to kill them off, not out of malice or bloodlust or that kind of thing, but because, simply, it's a way of mourning the character. There is a kind of serious point there as well about mourning, and if the audience know and can see that they aren't going to see that character again, then they can, you know, mourn, quite simply, as they would for a real person. But one always looks to the future. This happens in this kind of programme, where programmes run for as long as this one has. There comes a time when much-loved actors, much-loved characters, sadly have to move on to something else, or retire, or whatever. But along come new stars and new characters to love.
Well, you can learn a lot from Ronnie, because I think he's a professional, really. A lot of the younger members of the cast, they take their work seriously, but sometimes they're rolling after a night on the tile, something like that. And they're still, I don't know, you can always see Ronnie learning his lines, sat in a corner and going over and over them.
Well, it's not just that, Craig. I mean, Ronnie is a professional in every sense, because before he even gets to blocking the scenes in the rehearsal room, he knows his lines, he knows the scenes inside out, and that to me is a great inspiration, because none of the younger members of the cast, I mean, some of the younger members of the cast, dare I say it, don't even know the lines on the day. Well, no, they
please don't.
Whoops. No, but Ronnie knows even before we block the scenes, and to me that is a professional at work.
This is one thing I shall miss, Mr. Wilks. Your excellent team.
Oh, thank you, Amos. It's only taken me 18 years to get it right.
Oh, that could go in box on chair there.
Pardon?
Frying pan in box on chair with rest of my utensils.
But I thought this pan was ours.
Mr. Wilks, if you cast your mind back, I purchased
Ronnie
that.
has stamped himself, and there is no other Amos Brearly. Amos Brearly is Ronnie. No matter what any writer says or any director, you can't change that. But you see, inevitably, in a series or in a serial, over a length of time, no matter what control an author or a writer or a producer tries to exercise, inevitably the actor takes over the character. You know, he brings his own nuances to it, his own interpretation, and if you've any sense as a writer, or if you've any sense as a director or a producer, you capitalise on those things, because that's what the actor has to offer to that part.
I think the original conception of the character was that he would be more of your monosyllabic sort of Yorkshireman, you know, not very talkative. But he's become very verbose over the years, particularly since he's become the local correspondent for the Otten Courier, and he dabbles in poetry and all that. I think also in appearance he's got smarter. He was a bit scruffy when we first started, but when Wilks moved into the Woolpack, who is a dapper little gentleman, Amos started emulating him a bit, so he was always nicely dressed for the evening session, if not before. I think he's desperately looking for friendship and love in his life, really, which I don't think he's ever had.
No, there hasn't been much sex interest surrounding Amos Brearly, has there?
Well, I've never discussed it with the original creator of the series, Kevin Lafan, but I've always thought that Amos has never dabbled. I think he's dabbled his toes in the shallow end, but never swum out deep, if you see what I mean.
It'll be very strange. It was very strange, actually, when Toke died, who played Grandad, you know. I mean, at least we're getting used to the idea. We've got used to Ronnie going, and at least we can keep in touch. I mean, with Toke just dying like that, it was terrible upheaval. Well, we're going to really miss Ronnie. It's almost like a bereavement, but at least we can ring him and say, hello, how are you?
You've called him a wise old bird, haven't you? What do you mean by that?
He sits and listens and observes and sees both sides, comes to his own conclusions, but doesn't judge. That's what I like.
Well, Fraser, here we are in the Mistle. It's more Joe Sugden's natural habitat than it is Amos Brearly's, but nevertheless, within the Emmerdale family, the 5 or 6 of you who've been there for those 18 years, obviously you are going to miss him, aren't you, as a friend?
Oh, yes, I will miss him. Ronnie was, I think, one of the reasons I came back to the show. I left it for 3 years, and then I lost my wife and I lost my mother. Sheila rang up and said, you know, what are you doing? And I said, I'm working in a play. She said, well, why don't you come back, live with us again? And I met Ronnie and Freddie at a party, and they said, you know, it's not the same without you. Why don't you come back? And, you know, we all miss you. So that's, I think, Ronnie and Freddie and Sheila were the instigators for me to come back to Yorkshire. So I'm certainly going to miss him. Certainly will do.
Right, Amos. I suppose she wants her usual. Yes, 2 glasses of water, please.
Right,
Amos.
Matt, if that's what you want.
No, make it 2 pints of lager. We'll treat ourselves, eh, Terry?
It's all right.
Ronnie, oh, he was always very, very easy. Always very, very professional. Never came in and said, oh, Christ, I can't do this, I don't know it, I haven't learnt it, you know, all those tantrums that I used to throw when I was on him at a farm. You never saw one from Ronnie in all the time he's been in it. He's always very quiet, very peaceful. Didn't matter how many lines he had to learn, he'd learn them. He was there and he would do it. One of Ronnie's great strengths is that he created that character. I mean, as originally written, the character of Emmerdale was going to be the jolly landlord. And anything but the jolly landlord as Ronnie played. He's played sort of the opposite and got the audience laughing at this miserable old Amos and all like that. So he's been, I mean, of course he's created the character apart from what was actually written on the script. And unbeknown to a lot of viewers, not only is he an actor, he's a writer and a director. And I hope he might even direct me and give me some work, you never know. But, I mean, he is a man of the theatre.
What I would like to do, actually, is a lot of the reps I worked in, I would like to go back to them and perhaps pay them back a little something of what they gave me by, I mean, this may sound conceited, but I might sort of perk up the box office takings if I do a play for them, and I'd love to do that.
Many actors would give their eye teeth to have a long-running role, such as you've had for 18 years.
Indeed, yes. And also it's given me popularity with the public. I mean, it's marvellous to walk down the street and for people to say hello and stop and chat to you. I can't honestly say, and I mean, this may be just fortuitous, but I've never had anybody stop me and say, I think you're terrible and the character you play is awful. Some of them say, I think the show is dreadful, but my wife watches it. But, you know, nobody's ever been uncomplimentary to me, which is very nice. And I thought the cherry on my cake was yesterday. I had a letter from Jean Alexander, a fan letter saying how much she enjoyed my performance and how sorry she was I'm going. To have a letter from her, who I consider as the doyenne of soap operas, Hilda Ogden sending me a letter, I was chuffed, very chuffed.
Hey, did you know that Amos has left the Woolpack?
Well, that's the end of civilization as we know it.
Cheers, Amos!
I have been absolutely astounded by the reaction to my going. You know, both the public and the cast. And I shall miss it very much.
You can't bring another Amos in. So obviously the pub and the management of it is going to go in a slightly different direction. And something will fill the gap. But it certainly won't be a question of trying to replace Amos as Amos. When I go around, I meet hundreds of thousands of people in a year, and there's 2 questions I get asked, and the first one is always, is it real beer in the Woolpack? For some reason, people think it must be great to be an actor and there's real beer. So I say, yes, it is, which it is. The second question is Amos really like he is in real life? Well, the answer to that, of course, is not at all. Because if Ronnie Magill walked around acting like Amos, he wouldn't last more than a couple of hours. They'd lock him up. The police would either put him in a cell or the men in the white coats with the van would come and take him away, and he would be away permanently then, because there's nobody quite like Amos. And you just don't replace a character like Amos.
And there's just one thing that I'd like you to say to me. You've said it to Mr. Wilks 1,000 times. Perhaps you could end this by saying it to me.
Nay, nay, Mr. Whiteley.